22 long rifle and a handgun versus 38 special. What I have today is 38 special lead semi Wadcutter 158 grain. People have asked for a long time to see that performance in gel. It's not a hollow point, it's just a lead semi Wadcutter. All that really is a Wadcutter that kind of has a tip and more weight to the nose, so it penetrates really well. So we're going to see how that compares to Remington 22 Viper. And one might ask, why that? It's because the Viper bullet, even though it's considered a truncated cone, it's actually more of a semi Wadcutter. The edge around that bullet is very similar to the edge around that semi Wadcutter 38 special. So I'm going to test the 38 special through my 3-inch Taurus 856. I'm going to compare that to the 22 long rifle through my 4-inch TX22. I believe it's 4.1 inch. And the reason why is because you have about the same amount of barrel travel and about the same size gun overall when you're talking a 3-inch revolver versus a 4-inch auto. A lot of people get that wrong and they think 4-inch means 4-inch, but a 4-inch revolver is significantly larger. So our 38 special is rated at 755 feet per second. I believe that's to a 4-inch barrel. Our 22 long rifle, it's a 36 grain, as well as 158. 36 grain, and it's rated at 1410 feet per second, but that's through a rifle. So I'm going to see what we get here. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. I also have this cardboard guy up here. I'm going to see some practical shootability and accuracy on target from 7 yards. I'm also going to shoot my 10% clear ballistic test here, and I'm just going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential is of those cartridges are. What I mean by that is typically I test hollow points, and the best potential is to get expansion without getting the hollow point clogged with denim or anything like that. So I am going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what our best potential is, and then I'm going to do more of our real world simulation where I have 4 layers of denim on this first 3-inch piece here that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, I'm going to have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard to represent ribs or sternum. A lot of people ask why I do this, and they ask why 3 inches since the pectoral muscle isn't 3 inches thick. Most ballistics gel is roughly a half representation. It's not a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio. It's a very bizarre thing where a couple inches represents real skin. And after that, it's more of about a 1-to-2 ratio or 2-to-1, where, let's say you get 10 inches in ballistics gel, that's roughly 5 inches in a person. A lot of people wonder why I use the rib simulation. And to me, not using something like this is one of the biggest flaws in ballistic testing, because something hard generally changes the shape or size of that projectile, and that's going to significantly make a difference in how far it's going to penetrate. So I love using the rib simulation. I feel like it's more realistic. So after our ballistic test, and shooting at the cardboard target, I probably shoot at some steel because I got a lot of rounds of these, and to see what kind of practical shootability I can get shooting at the steel. So let's get started with this test. All right, I'm going to chronograph these. First up, we have our Remington Viper 22 long rifle 36 grain. I don't know what these are going to give me in a handgun. Ideally, I'd like to see upper 900s to 1,000 feet per second with a 30 grain bullet. That's pretty typical velocity, so that's kind of my goal with these. So let's see how I can get with our 22 long rifle, kind of velocity we get. .985. No read. 993. 974. 1044. 999. So that's about what I was expecting and hoping to get. So I would say velocity is pretty good. It's pretty average. So 38 special, 755 feet per second is our rate of velocity on this 158 grain lead semi Wadcutter. I'm using a 3-inch barrel, so let's see what I get. See how close I get to that 755 feet per second. .771, 787, 783, 790, 788. All above rated velocity, so that's pretty good. Point of impact is really far off from where most ammo hits, even on a gun like this. This barrel's a little funky. It's always shot to the left, but not that high in that left. So interesting. Let's start our ballistics gel block and see what we get with these. All right, plain clear ballistic test with both of these. Let's see how these compare. Let me start with the 38 Special. Let's kind of be our benchmark. And that's, you know, one thing about testing 22 long rifle versus other things, a lot of people actually get angry about it because they think it's a competition where I'm trying to make 22 long rifle look bad. And when in reality, what I'm trying to do is take something that's a standard performer, 38 Special, 9mm, 380 ACP, see what that does, and then compare the 22 to it to see if it's any good at all in comparison. See if it's, you know, even close enough to be a good defensive cartridge. That's all I'm doing when I do this. So, plain clear ballistics, 38 Special. Let's see what this does. All right, put that with our 22 long rifle. See how this compares. Let's go take a look. All right, so interesting. I was assuming I was going to get more penetration with that semi-Wadcutter, because semi-Wadcutters are known for staying in a straight line. That's really what they're meant to do, but the bullet is facing backwards with that 38 Special, which would indicate tumbling. And that makes sense because a 158 grain bullet is long and it's moving slow. Those are two things you need for destabilizing a projectile once it hits something. And it did that because we have damage that would indicate tumbling and the bullet is backwards. So I wasn't thinking that semi-Wadcutters were supposed to do that, but it looks like it did. We have a penetration here of about 14, almost 14 3/4 inches. So that's definitely very ideal penetration. Now with our 22 long rifle, what we're seeing here is potentially tumbling. I'm not really sure. Our penetration is at about 9 3/4. Camera parallax will make it look like I'm putting my finger, you know, behind where that bullet is, and it looks like it's up further, but it's not. It's at, on a straight view here where I'm looking at, it's 9 3/4 inches. So that's a little bit shallow, but being that this is, you know, a half representation of the density of flesh, you're close to 10 inches, you're close to 5 inches in a person. What that's going to tell you is if you made a front-on shot, there's enough penetration there. There's enough penetration for a dome shot, stuff like that. But going through the arm, through the side, you need to have at least 12 inches to ensure that you can hit something vital from a side shot. That's where the 12-inch minimum came from. And the 38 Special has enough momentum to do that, even though it doesn't have a lot of energy. All right, 22, not quite. So let's put on our denim and our MDF, see how they compare that way. I know the denim is redundant since these are not hollow points, but I like to keep things consistent. So let's do more of our real world simulation, see how they compare that way. All right, 38 Special through our denim, through our MDF. See how this does. All right, put that to 22 long rifle. Let's go take a look. All right, so the MDF had almost no change to that performance with our 38 Special, but there was some change to the 22 long rifle. Interesting. And what I can see here is the effect that I thought was probably going on here. Because when we look here at our 22 long rifle hole through the MDF, after it went through this 3 inches, it destabilized enough that it was tumbling. We get keyhole through there, which that's not necessarily a bad thing with a lot of cartridges, but the 22 is kind of weak, so definitely it limited that penetration. But what I am seeing that's absolutely fantastic here is the performance with the 38 Special. We went in here and we started tumbling about right here after going through the MDF, and that channel kind of blocks the channel from the plain gel, but that's the same point at which in plain gel it started to tumble. And we have almost the same penetration. Instead of 14 3/4, we have about 14 even. So it's very much denim blind and rib simulation blind. Our 22 long rifle we have a penetration of about 8¼ inches. Definitely below what we want to see. However, being a a half representation of density, and being that the rib simulation in and of itself does take away anywhere between 1 and 2 inches of penetration depending on the load. It's kind of adequate with the front on shot. It's just not going to be anywhere near consistent for being able to stop a threat from all angles. So that's something to be aware of. So let me shoot at, well, let me take a close-up look at these. We'll take a close-up look and see what they look like. Then I'm going to shoot up my cardboard at 7 yards, see how these compare. All right, so here's the close-up look at these bullets going through our plain ballistic gel. There's really no change to either of these. Those bullets are not deformed or mangled or anything like that. There's not much change to them. 38, the only real change is that rifling against that bore. That is what makes lead ammo often very accurate. It's a 38 special is generally 357 when it's diameter when it's jacketed, but it's 358 when it is lead. So it squeezes into that bore, it forms to that bore, makes it extraordinarily accurate. Now, going through our medium density fiberboard with our 38 special, we can definitely see some big changes there. The overall length is actually a little bit shorter with our medium density fiberboard from a little bit of flattening of that, and we got some damage to that bullet. And that's why I like to use the MDF, because you get damage like that, and that's more real world. And if you've ever seen real bullets pulled from a living creature, they don't necessarily look like that. They're going to look more like this. And we got some serious mangling going on with our 22 long rifle. The entire bottom is mangled, so it's like it starts to tumble a little bit in that first 3 inches, and this, it doesn't do much to it. It just tumbles into it, goes pretty deep. But this is starting to tumble into it, hits that rib simulation. That's what in the real world, that's the type of stuff that happens. So it limited that penetration. That's how you get a lot of weird stories of stuff where people are shot with 22, like it entering their skull and it didn't harm them because it scraped along the dome in the inside and then came out the back. That type of thing happens, and that's why, because you get bullet mangling when it hits something hard. So interesting looking at these up close. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, 7 yards from the target. One thing to note when I do this, I'm not pulling this up and I'm not lining up those rear sights to the front sight. I'm barely getting a glimpse of that front sight, and it's mostly me focusing down on the barrel with barely just a little bit of that front sight. I like to do that because for me it just keeps it more realistic. It's kind of sharpening my abilities in a real life situation. So I'm not slow firing for accuracy. So if I hit bigger patterns, as long as I can hit on the cardboard, I'm fine with that. So 38 special, I'll start from low ready, bring it up and see how these do for me. Let's do a controlled pair, see how it looks. Again, a little bit left for me. One thing I love about the 22 is there's not really much thinking about it. You just pop them off and it seems very easy to control, and that's why a lot of people like it. So 22 long rifle, we'll see how this compares. All right, that's good enough. All right, let me hit some more on target, just empty the rest of these. And to be honest, I don't know if I hit all of them or not, but there's a lot of smoke going on. 22 long rifle, let's see how this does. And we're out. And to be honest, I didn't even look at the front of the gun. I just let them go. So I want to try some Mozambique drills, see if that's doable with either of these. See how they feel for me. So 2 to the body, 1 to the head is our Mozambique drill. Let's see if I can do all right with our 38 special. A little bit high there. Let me try that one more time. And I think for me, I'm just not able to hit with this gun very well. didn't seem like it hit very good. So 22 long rifle. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit high on that because the sight, it's hard for me to pick up. At the moment I fire, I can see that it's too high, the sight. Yeah, so those sights are on pretty well. Very effective, very easy to hit a target with a 22, and that's why a lot of people like them. Just very easy. So let me shoot my steel, see what kind of practical shootability I can get on the steel with these. All right, 40 yards from the target. I'm just gonna do 6 rounds of the 38 Special because I think this ammo is good enough that it warrants a better test than either a longer barrel or my shorter barrel. This 3-inch revolver doesn't shoot that good for me. So I'm just gonna slow fire 6 of these from 40 yards. I'm gonna aim to the right a good foot and just see how they do for me. And I am aiming actually about 1.5 to 2 feet to the right, so yeah, every ammo in this gun shoots a little bit right. A lot of people say send it back, but you don't know what it's like dealing with tourists. They are not customer friendly. So 22 long rifle, I'm just gonna have some fun here. See how these shoot for me. And this got a nosedive down jam in this. It could just be this magazine, but it didn't feed that next round. And that's why a lot of people like 22. You don't have to think much. You know, I remember starting out with 22, and I think I understand why people like 22 so much. I remember starting out, I had centerfire revolvers, I had rimfire revolvers, I had centerfire semi-autos and centerfire or rimfire semi-autos. And I remember there was a difference. It was very difficult to hit with a centerfire, and I could never figure out what the issue was that I couldn't hit a target with a center fire, but with the rim fire I could hit it. And I think a lot of that comes down to just technique. You could do pretty much everything wrong with the rim fire, and it kind of hits. So let me shoot from 75 yards just for fun. I'm enjoying this. A nice day out today, and then I'll conclude what I think about this ammo. All right, 75 yards from the target. Gotta remember, I'm just having some fun here. I'm not training for self-defense. But I am surprised at how accurate this was at 40 yards without really thinking about it. So let me see what it does at 75 yards. Alright, so I can't see those impacts, but I was discovering very quickly I heard a different type of metallic sound. That's my camera protector plate. So we're getting some drop at that distance. So the last of those shots where I started to hit, I was aiming on the head at that target. So I'll keep aiming there, see how I keep doing. Tap, rack. It worked. 90% of the time that doesn't work. So I'm going to say this is very consistent 22 long rifle ammunition. You know, Remington does not have a good reputation for 22 long rifle, but you know, they were just bought out, and I believe that their quality has definitely increased. And I'm seeing everything I test in Remington lately has significantly increased in velocity. You know, I tested some older Remington, not this particular one, but, you know, 36 grain Remington, golden bullets and stuff like that. I'm seeing stuff like 800 feet per second, 820. You know, getting a 36 grain up to 1,000 feet per second was not something they used to do. Same thing with this 38 Special. I've tested stuff like this back when I was doing water jug testing, and I recall even in like a 4-inch barrel, I think I was barely getting 700 feet per second. I think I was upper 600s or something, and maybe like 650 feet per second with this type of ammo in my snub nose. So the fact that I'm getting upper 700s, almost 800 out of my 3-inch revolver with that 158 grain does definitely mean they have increased that power. And I saw the same thing with 357 mag, 125 grain semi-jacket at hollow point. In the past, I used to get like 1350, 1375 feet per second on average. The last ones I tested, I was getting something like 1480 or 1500 feet per second on average. So they've increased their quality quite a bit in the past year or so. So let's talk about this particular test though. The 22 long rifle here, not bad overall. What I like about this and what I like to put into my tests, a lot of people don't, is the accuracy. And not just, you know, what I can group on paper if I really try, but just the overall feel of that accuracy. If it's easy to hit with, if I don't think about it too much, it means that it's loaded consistently if I keep hitting. You know, a lot of ammo that's not loaded consistency, I'll see where to hold at distance and I'll miss all these other shots. With this, it pretty much wasn't like that. It's a very consistent ammunition. So we know what to expect with this Remington Viper. We're going to get a little bit subpar penetration, but potentially it's enough to work. And I would say overall it's not bad ammunition. It's probably not going to be my pick for self-defense, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. It looked like it worked okay. Now with our 38 Special, I was really kind of surprised with this. You know, in my past testing with this stuff, I've used just water jugs. So I was really curious to what we would see in the gel. A couple things stood out as interesting. One is, forever, I've been told a semi-Wadcutter was a good bullet for hunters, and you know, it's just a good bullet overall because when it hits something, it doesn't tumble because it's a flat nose, and that Wadcutter edge around it will cut a path through, and it will just keep going straight. What I'm seeing is it does look like there's tumbling out of a handgun. But what I saw was very consistent performance. We did not get under penetration, and we did not get over penetration. And a lot of people are looking for something like that that they don't have to think about, and that's a really big thing. Because if you're looking for, you know, you're sick of not getting hollow point expansion with, let's say, 380 ACP, or even maybe a short barrel 9mm, you know, it's hard to get something that's not going to expand. Like, let's say I'm going to use a ball round instead, without it over penetrating. At least some, even 380 ACP is going to penetrate to 22 inches or something like that some of the time. But this, it's built just right, with just slow enough velocity, just long enough a bullet to tumble that we get consistent penetration. That's enough penetration without over penetration. So I think that's a really good performer, and that warrants me testing it in a longer barrel. I think I could test it in my 2-inch barrel, but I think I'll go longer barrel. But one thing about ammo like this is it usually doesn't change significantly between barrel lengths because, you know, it's just lead. So you don't have a lot of bore drag. Typically the difference between a 2-inch barrel and a 4-inch barrel is only maybe 80 feet per second. And because it's not expanding with either, you're going to get very similar performance. But I think in a gun that's right, I think I could get a lot better accuracy and performance out of it. So overall, I'm going to say not bad overall. And you got to remember, this is not a competition to make the 22 long rifle look bad. It's just taking a standard performer and comparing it to, you know, the rimfire and seeing how that compares. And this particular rimfire compares about the same as other stuff I've tested. You know, being that it's a truncated cone or semi-Wadcutter, didn't really do anything here in this test. It didn't look like it tumbled, didn't look like it did a whole lot of anything spectacular. But the semi-Wadcutter on the center fire seems like it did something kind of cool. So that's what you get today. Take it for what it is, and draw your own conclusions. I think the 38's not bad. 22 is not bad, but not good necessarily. 38 Special is pretty good here. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.